Hello everyone, my name is Optima and today I'm bringing you all a brand new video where we're going to focus on a really cool opportunity that was presented to the Legends of Runeterra community where we get to discuss with the devs on balance for Legends of Runeterra with a January patch on the way that's apparently currently being worked on. So this was just a really cool unique opportunity presented to the Runeterra community, so I thought it was a great idea to use this as a motivator to actually post a video. So I hope you guys enjoy that, enjoy seeing my face since it's been a while, and if you do enjoy my thoughts, opinions, and all that as far as this video goes, consider supporting. You guys know how to support on YouTube, and if any devs watch, I really appreciate it. So let's just recap what exactly this opportunity is. Legends of Runeterra developers Alex Lee and Aleko Pores, they may have been more involved because I'm sure they did some stuff on Reddit as well. I just haven't checked that out. But those two specifically were on Twitter and offered the opportunity for the entire community to just voice their thoughts and opinions relating on balance in Legends of Runeterra currently. And this is just amazing to see from the dev team, and I absolutely got to show them love and some praise, considering I've been very critical of them in the past for kind of doing the opposite of this. I thought there was times where the vision is what needed to be fixed / changed, and from the community and from the dev team hasn't aligned, and we saw that in patch notes, and then there was just no further room for like any discussion, transparency, and understanding from either side because we didn't have like an avenue like this open. So I love seeing stuff like this, and I hope we get more of it in the future. I know that they've done the stream kind of patch discussions in the past, but I just don't think those hit quite the same, and I would like to see more of this specifically. But at the end of the day, the dev team generally does a great job, so I'm just throwing out a couple of things there. But yeah, it creates a healthier relationship between the players and devs when every player can feel like their voice is kind of being heard out. And then lastly, they did this with a lot of class and professionalism, so you just love to see this all around. So we're going to start with the popular nerfs that were suggested by a ton of people in the community. Let's just throw our 2 cents on those. Then we can move on to a bunch of our own stuff that we'd like to see as far as nerfs and buffs, mostly buffs. But yeah, let's get to it. Let's switch over to the other screen. So first off, we're going to have Poppy for nerfs. Second is going to be Scion. From there, we're going to have Conchologists. Then we're going to have Bandel City Mare. Then we're going to have Lecturing Yordle. Then we're going to have Ithe Dragon, then Bandel Tree, and then Minimorph. So a lot of Bandel City cards. Obviously, that's been a huge topic of discussion. It's just kind of bringing down the Bandel City pile of great cards that you can throw in just every deck. So no surprise that these are the cards that a lot of people were discussing. And yeah, I'm excited to just see, to offer my 2 cents on them. So first is going to be Poppy, and Poppy for me is just going to be such a straightforward champion. Like, just not a lot of design flavor going on with Poppy at all. And I think when you throw that in conjunction with the fact that Poppy is actually an extremely strong card in the game as well when she's attacking, I just think those two together leave an extra sour taste in your mouth when it comes to losing to Poppy. So yeah, Poppy is an absolute nerf call, nerfed a card that should be nerfed. My god, what am I saying over here? Poppy should definitely be nerfed, and I think it didn't make a ton of sense to me as to why she avoided nerfs in the previous patch, considering that I know we got like Nami nerfed and Draven nerfed, but I would argue that Poppy was just on the same level of both of those cards as far as the amount, how strong she was, the amount of decks she was elevating, and yeah, just prevalence. I would argue she was right there with them, so I was a little perplexed by that. But at the end of the day, if we can get her nerfed in this January patch, that'd be great to see. My suggestion is going to coincide with a lot of people who said that Poppy should no longer buff backline units. I absolutely agree with that, but I feel a little bit like that may not be enough. So my additional suggested nerf would be to also decrease her attack from 4 to 3, just so she's not putting so much pressure on. But those are yeah, that's going to be pretty much all I really got on Poppy. Please nerf the card. But at the end of the day, I understand she's carrying Demacia's play rate on her back, so if she just gets a slap on the wrist, I wouldn't be surprised, and I want you guys to not be surprised either. Next is going to be Scion, and Scion's going to be quite the frustrating card for me, just because I think it it was very clear it needed to be nerfed, and instead we got the Draven nerf, which did make a ton of sense to me. I'm not even a Draven player. He's actually one of my least played champions, but I think he's good for the game. I think he elevates a lot of different decks and archetypes, and I think that's just what you should want from your champions. But Scion pretty much only has the real solid deck of Scion Draven, and in that deck he comes down on 7 and applies way more pressure than he should be, that either you die to his attack or the burn damage that PNZ offers this Noxus PNZ deck finishes you off the turn after. So it's just such a frustrating card to face off against, and I thought it was pretty clear he was the main culprit of the Draven Scion package, aside from obviously the 4/3 card that had Challenger. Woo, was that a ridiculous card at first. But aside from that card, I thought Scion was pretty glaringly obviously the card that needed to be nerfed, and he's just a huge reason why Minimorph feels like a good card right now. So let's make him 8 mana, please. He does too much at 7. Next is going to be Bandle City Mare. Bandle City Mare, quick and let's make this quick and easy. He curves too well in the decks he's played in, and then he discounts all really good cards. He doesn't discount any like bad card that you're adding in just because it's discounted now. Like, they're all extremely good cards in the decks that they're played in, and he just curves too well with those decks as far as like the turn that he's now discounting everything is just too impactful. Turn 4 is great to have Bandle City Mare down. So I would like to see him mana increase. I don't think that'll kill the card, but you never know. People really don't play nerfed cards often, so we will have to see, but I think he absolutely needs something done. And for me, the only thing I could really see making enough of an impact is to make him 1 mana more expensive. Next is going to be Conchologists, and this is going to be the first of this batch of cards where I'm going to say please leave this card alone. The reason being is going to be that I just think, one, the card's not overstated. Like, it's a 2/2. Making it a 2/1 I don't think would change a ton, but it's a 2/2. And secondly, I know that he gives you like another spell, which is just such a huge deal, especially like in comparison with other regions. But I just think if we nerf a decent bit of the rest of the Bandle cards, he won't feel as bad in comparison afterwards. And I also just believe the way he works is just cool. He gives you the 3 mana and below spell mana and below spells. And that is such an interesting pool of cards in my opinion. And there is quite a bit of cards that in that pool that just don't see any play because they're too niche in what they do to be main decked. 40 cards isn't a lot of cards, so to add these cards into those 40 cards is really difficult to do. So I just think it's really cool that you see some underused cards and some big brain plays happening because of Conchologists manifesting a cool card. So I'm a fan of him. I would like to see him not nerfed and a lot of other things touched in Bandle, but I would still understand if he did get touched up. Next is going to be Lecturing Yordon. Lecturing Yordon, another card. Let's keep this simple. It is overstated, especially when you add in the fact that he generates the Puff Cap spell upon summon and upon attacking. That's just way too much for a 3/5 unit that nothing trades with at that mana cost. So let's tone that down and yeah, just really bring this card more in line. It's a huge part of what feels bad about Bandle City right now. My soft nerf is to just make him 4 health, but I think maybe even taking away the summon of part of his effect may be necessary. Next is going to be Kerrys Shellfolk, and Kerrys Shellfolk is a card I actually really dislike. And I know a lot of people have had a lot of fun with this card, and it's brought a lot of content because it's an interesting card you can get a good thumbnail and some crazy plays with from. But at the end of the day, I just don't think it's a healthy card in the game at its current mana cost at all. And that's going to start off with just believing it feels better than a lot of champions. Like, Shellfolk is literally better than a decent bit of champions, which is actually crazy to say. So that's already an issue off the bat. Furthermore, in my opinion, the card just snowballs too easy because it needs like the littlest sliver of mana to actually do something. So yeah, it's too easy to actually get value out of this card. And then the worst part, well, just the worst feeling part is the whole way it works, which is using Prank to steal cards. So stealing cards was an issue in the past because people didn't like Plunder at its peak. It felt bad to have your cards stolen, and it still does. But now your cards will get stolen, get their cost increase, and be revealed in that moment and continue to be revealed the rest of the game. So that's just so much value all tied into a 6-drop that also is pretty well statted at 4/6. I just want the mana increased, make it a 7 mana unit, and then it'd be much harder for this card to really do what it does, which it should be much harder because the effect is amazing. So I would like to see that. I think it'd be much healthier place for Kerrys Shellfolk to be in at 7 mana, and I think it'd slow it down actually quite a lot. Next is going to be Ithe Dragon, and this is going to be the one where I'm going to link you guys to the description of the video. There you're going to find the thread on Twitter where everyone was kind of voicing their opinions, at least to Alex. I'll also leave the thread that I think Aleko also put out there as well. But the one specifically to Alex, I saw a ton of people suggesting really quality changes to Ithe Dragon, so I don't think this is one I want to go too in depth on. I just want to say please do it. Lee Sin's been terrorizing the tournament meta for a while now, and it's kind of needed to be touched up for a while. So even though he's inconsistent on ladder, menace in tournament, please fix him. And then we're going to get to Bandel Tree, and Bandel Tree is just for me a very poorly designed card. So even if Bandel Tree isn't an amazing meta defining deck in the meta right now, I still think Bandel Tree just is so poorly designed. For this point in Legends of Runeterra, we just do not have adequate landmark removal. So I just think even if the deck's being inconsistent, it's still not a deck that really deserves to have a place in the meta until we get better landmark removal, considering its win cons interactive. So it will have times where it beats you just because it had a great hand to answer your stuff and you didn't have what you needed, even if it's a winning matchup, because its win cons kind of uninteractive. And yeah, I don't think that's healthy for the game long term. So even if the card gets killed because of a nerf, I think that's best for the game at this moment, because we don't have solid ways to address a card like Bandel Tree. I would like to see that card nerfed. And last of the popular nerf suggestions is going to be none other than the notorious Minimorph. This is actually a card I had to flip-flop a little bit on, especially initially when I was first playing against it, as far as if it's healthy or not. But with cards in the meta like Lee Sin, Scion, and Poppy even to an extent, they're just all pretty polarizing champions that don't really feel like we have the greatest options of addressing them in the game at the moment. So I think that Minimorph just kind of has its place, and it's a healthy card, even if it feels bad on the more fair champions like Victor. That would feel pretty bad to have your Victor, your Riven, your Fiora nerfed, but because of these other polarizing champions, I think it needs to stay the way it is. But that's my personal opinion, and that's going to be it of those popular suggested nerfs. So let me know which one I missed and whiffed on, but yeah, those are my thoughts there. Now let's get into some more spicier takes as far as things I would like to see nerfed and buffed. So this is going to start with champions, and first is going to be none other than Sejuani. And Sejuani is a very interesting card, and a lot of people may not agree with me here, but let's think about it. Sejuani Gangplank has been a deck that has been terrorizing the meta for like 3 different seasons now. Plunder is just amazing, specifically in this package. And the more I've played against the deck, the more the game feels less in my control over my plays, and a lot more in the control of my opponent if they get the early amazing curve into a level Sejuani. And then I have to draw my removal, or I probably just lose. And that's pretty frustrating to play against. But I feel like even more so, the issues of Sejuani are echoed by the emergence of the Teemo Sejuani deck, which has easy Nexus pings in the form of Pokestick and the Lecturing Yordle Puff Cap spell. And then you also have Hexcore Foundry with Ezreal and PNZ, and I just kind of refuse to believe that that deck doesn't also still have a place in the meta, because it just does such a great job of throwing stuff at the Nexus as well, so that Sejuani's leveled when you need Sejuani leveled. And at the end of the day, Sejuani is easily one of the most powerful level ups in the game. There's just no denying that. So I think maybe Sejuani is okay for now, but it's a card that absolutely needs to be closely monitored moving forward as we get new cards into the game, especially if we're going to get more good quality cards like Pokestick that hit the Nexus and offer even more value. Those are amazing cards. So I think yeah, it would be great for us to very much so keep our eyes on Sejuani moving forward, and she's another card that just makes Minimorph feel so good. Next is going to be Hecarim, and Hecarim's a champion that I think is just so well designed. I love the way he works, and he's always felt really fun to play. However, since the Grand Plaza nerf, because that was the only time recently Infernals have felt decent because they were able to trade into stuff because they kept getting Challenger, but since that's been nerfed, there's been no place in the meta for Hecarim, and that feels bad in my opinion, as it's a very cool, fun card that literally entirely elevates the word Infernal as a word in the game. But ephemerals are really bad, so if we can just buff those, I think Hecarim can have a place in the meta even with the way he currently works. We just need better support cards for him. Next is going to be LeBlanc, and LeBlanc is another champion that I would like to see buffed. This is going to be different though, where LeBlanc has had her time in the meta, but now she's just seen a staggeringly sharp decline in play rate, and I think that's strongly because of the prowess of Bandle City, especially Bandle City being able to go wide so quickly. It's really hard to play a champ like LeBlanc that could also easily be removed by them. So for those reasons, I just think LeBlanc's level up is just too hard to meet, on top of it not really being that good. She has to see all 15 damage, and for a 2 health unit, that's just really tough, and Noxus doesn't really offer any defensive tools to keep her alive, so you gotta go fish for those. So I would say LeBlanc can absolutely use some type of buff to her level up. The only thing I could come up with was making mirror image fast speed, but I really don't think that'd be enough, so I'm leaving it to the devs with this one on how to figure out LeBlanc, because I don't have a great idea with her. I know the whole part of her design is for her to have small amounts of health with high attack. That's the point of her design, so I don't really like the idea of just like doing something there. Next is going to be Malphite, and Malphite's going to be a champion that I think is the only one that rivals Poppy in the amount of blandness that I feel when I just look at the champion. And yeah, I just think blank card other than tough before leveling and then level when he stuns, just not a lot going on there, and it's a really boring card. So let's possibly, for a 7 mana champion, let's give Malphite some type of landmark generation where he generates a landmark upon summon, or gives you a free one in hand upon summon. That would be cool, and would also help him be a more usable champion as well, in my opinion, because he's still only seen in the Talia package, and even then that deck's not really showing much right now. Next, let's talk about some followers, and first of the followers is going to be Brightside Protector. And Brightside Protector is a card I've kind of been like wanting to have nerfed for a while now, and I just have yet to understand how the 2 mana 3/2 plus give barrier to any card you choose on your side of the field. I've struggled to see how that's ever been aligned with other 2-drops in the game. It just has always felt better. People want to say Conchologists feels bad, but man, does a Brightside Protector also feel bad at 2 mana with even better stats. And barrier is just an amazing keyword, changes the entire game, because you could have a strong attack into your opponent's board, but as soon as a barrier goes on a 3 health unit, that could change the entire attack, and that's at 2 mana it's doing that. And since it's so cheap in mana, it also is generally followed up by a rally, so that it makes it just kind of snowball real easily and feel even worse. So I would really like to see Brightside Protector touched. I think he's a huge part of what makes Demacia aggro decks feel terrible to play against. So yeah, definitely would love to see that card get more in line with the rest of 2-drops in the game. Next is going to be Devoured Counsel, and Devoured Counsel I just think is a cool card that's just so bad as a 1/6 and only healing 2 on the Nexus and Champs. I think if we make it a 2/4 and have it heal 4 on the Nexus and Champs instead, it can actually have a home within those mono Shurima decks and possibly even more. And the fact that it works with having to have a level champion keeps it still in a design kind of flavor that works with Shurima, so I would love to see that change. Next is going to be Justice Rider, and Justice Rider was going to be one of the cards that we got in the recent flash bomb package with Caitlyn, and unfortunately flash bombs are just kind of awkward if you try to go all in on them right now, just because Justice Rider is supposed to be the mid game, and yet it's a terrible card. At 4 mana, it's a card that needs to avoid combat to actually give you any value, because the way it gives value is through your opponent drawing, and every time they draw, a random flash bomb is planted in the top 10 cards. That is so bad for a 4 mana unit to have to avoid combat and do something that's pretty underwhelming. So I think bare minimum, let's give it 2 flash bombs per draw, and that could maybe help a little. I'm not sure that would still even be enough, but it's better than what we're currently dealing with from Justice Rider. Next is going to be Ava Achiever, and this is actually going to be a card I played a lot of, which is actually kind of sad to say considering how bad this card really actually is. I'm just such a huge fan of how cool it is design wise, and I'm also someone who's willing to play bad cards to know for sure they're bad cards. But yeah, it's so cool the way it works, and I also just think it's a well designed card as far as the art, and it just brings that more all-in space for puff caps with Bandle City, which is cool alongside those Yordles. But yeah, card's so bad. It's a 4/4 unit that costs 6, and it throws 3 puff caps into the deck upon summon. Random cards though, and then 3 more round in. However, opponents generally try to prioritize removing this card when you play it. It's really hard for the puff cap styles of decks to really play that defensively, so then having to put all 6 mana into a 4/4 unit that then is not going to block the next turn so it can continue to give you value is really tough to do. So that's where I think if she's going to stay with the 4/4 stat line, then she needs a much better effect. So I just think the way to accomplish that is to have her throw 5 into the enemy deck rather than 3. So 5 upon summon and 5 upon round in. That would feel much better in my opinion, and I think especially if we get that lecturing Yordon nerf, which we should get, it will coincide pretty well with that to still give those Bandle puff cap followers, those Bandle Yordles who love their puff caps, will give them a little bit more to work with, which I'll be a huge fan of. I love Ava Achiever, great work there. Next is going to be Intrepid Mariner, and Intrepid Mariner is just a cool, unique card that I've just, since I've been playing the game, have yet to see ever really work out. But it does give the keyword elusive upon supporting another attacking unit, and that's a little tricky to really work with too much because of the fact of how easily elusive can get out of hand. And I know we're not currently in the meta where we're seeing any huge ballistic bots from PNZ, but an Intrepid Mariner into a huge ballistic bot can easily have people wanting this card gone. So I see why the card hasn't really been touched, but I would love to see what it could do as a 1/4 rather than the 1/3 it currently is. I'm more than sure 1/3 was very intentional so that it's not really an offensive unit but has a decent defensive stat so it can survive an attack. I think pushing that even further to 1/4 would really help, because on turn 2, which what it is, you just never really have a follower that you're already trying to hit the nexus with this card. So I just think it needs to at least have a little bit more defensive prowess so that it can actually like stay around and work better with the later game, because you're almost never playing this card actually on 2. This would also give PNZ more space to use those cards that upon striking the nexus, the said X thing happens. There's one that like makes a copy of itself and the other that makes a spell. So if those cards want to also see usage, I think making Intrepid Mariner an actual usable card would really help. Next is going to be a Doomkeeper revert. We kind of nerfed Azir out of existence, so if that's going to be where we stand on that deck and nothing's going to change, then I think we can change Doomkeeper back to his original design. We see a ton of Treasure Seeker, which is cool, but I would love to see Doomkeeper back in the meta, just where he's not tied into such a toxic deck anymore, and possibly also breeds a little more life into Hecarim Azir, which is a deck I just really want to work because they're just 2 really cool champions, especially alongside each other. So yeah, I would like to see Doomkeeper reverted and see how that works. And lastly, this is not a nerf or a buff, but this is just a admiration shout out to a design that I want to see more of, and that's going to be Brohuburgornine Sentinel. Those are going to be those kind of recently included SI cards, Shadow Isles cards that we got, and yeah, they're the ones that when you slay a unit, they get boosted stats, and I just love the idea of that design, because one thing that feels terrible in Legends of Runeterra is when you lose to aggro because you didn't stuff 12 cheap units into your deck, and then you go stuff those 12 cheap units into your deck, and then you play a mid-range deck and top deck nothing but those cheap units and then lose to mid-range. So I would say a great way to kind of avoid that is these cards that are good units at their mana cost, but then later in the game, if they meet a certain condition, they can become even better units. That's a great way to give these units like a way to still feel good later into the game. I love the idea of it, and yeah, I think there's a lot more room to mess around with this. I know Enlightenment is supposed to kind of work that way, but games don't go to turn 10. It just does not happen. So I think this is a cool way of accomplishing that can work a lot more consistently than what we currently have, and I think it would really make the game feel better overall to have more design like those 2 cards. Huge shout out to whoever designed those, and I love the art as well, so shout out to the artist. Lastly, we're going to just go over these spell buffs that I have here, just some cool ones that I think can really help out the game, and that should wrap things up. So let's do the first one, which is going to be Heaven's Align, and Heaven's Align is going to be such a bad card. Like, whoa, is this card egregiously bad? And I'm someone who knows this because I've played an insane amount of Daybreak. Leona is one of my favorite champions in Legends of Runeterra, and Ravan is my favorite follower. But I super appreciated the Ravan buff and the Solari Priestess buff, but I don't think either of those address the worst parts parts of Daybreak, and I think the two worst parts is one, Leona feeling lackluster as a champion when Ravon's not on board, and secondly is that good players set up good open attacks against Daybreak so that they can get around the Daybreak effects. And yeah, that always sucks having that happen so often. So I think moving Heaven's Aligned from focus speed to burst speed would then allow Leona to then, if she's on the field, so you at least have to have her on the field, but if she's on the field, she can work with a burst speed stun, which would really help out Daybreak as a kind of archetype. So something I would like to see. Next is going to be, especially since Heaven's Aligned is still such a bad card. It gives you unplayable Nightfall cards so often. Next is going to be Paddlestar, and Paddlestar is another card that I feel like could help out Leona, but I feel like it could also help out Targon's play rate overall, and just see some interesting things happen. At the game's moved to a point where removal is everything. If you don't have decent removal options, your deck probably cannot exist in the meta unless it is aggro. And obviously Targon is not an aggro region at all. So it kind of needs to have a decent removal option, and Paddlestar's been bad because it's not only slow speed, but it's also 4 mana. I think at least dropping it from slow speed to fast should happen, but I would love to even further see it go to 3 mana so that Targon could have a little bit of removal to work with that doesn't have to be created. I think Paddlestar is a good a card that could really help out Targon and be a healthy card within the meta. Next is going to be Weight of Judgment, which is a card that's never really worked, that's never really seen any play more so. So why not? Let's just move it to fast speed, and I think if it did 3 damage to a champion rather than 2, that would also help. So I would just like to see Weight of Judgment get a buff and see if it actually changes anything. Maybe we'll see a Swain Shurima deck rise in play rate. Next is going to be Dragon's Clutch. I was happy for Dragons. It got all of those recent buffs, but I actually think nerfing this card a little bit just so it feels a little better against other mid-range decks would be kind of fair. Currently at burst speed, that just feels so bad against other mid-rangey decks. I know Dragons isn't tearing the meta up because it can still be really bad against some aggro focused decks, and like obviously Pike and Rek'Sai Lurk really shot up in play rate at the beginning of the meta because it was a great deck against Dragons, but I think at the end of the day, Dragons can feel really bad into other mid-range decks because of Dragon's Clutch. So I feel like we kind of maybe hit the wrong thing there as far as what we buffed, and I think Dragon's Clutch being fast speed would definitely help. And my last thought here is just going to be on control in general. I know there's been a lot of discussion about control in Runeterra and it not being good enough and how we can go about fixing that, and I just went out for my little 2 cents in this discussion, and that's just going to be that first off, I'm not a control player, so I know I come from a place of bias, but I've always erred on the side of thinking people exaggerate how bad control is in Legends of Runeterra. I honestly strongly believe that. I feel like the Tryndamere Trundle Fielder Rush deck is better than a lot of people want to believe. Just a lot of people aren't great at playing it. And yeah, furthermore though, I just think that control spells like Vengeance, Ruination, and stuff like that are very interesting like spells that can really start making the game feel really bad if we just make them all so good. So I think we should definitely err on the cautious side when it comes to buffing those kill everything or kill this card control tools and focus more on design like Stress Defense. I think Stress Defense is an amazing kind of stall / control tool. It allows you to not kill the unit but make it a very unimpactful attacker so that you can still continue to slow the game down and get back to your like slower game control style stuff that's going to win you the game. And it's just super impactful. It also works on your champions so you can keep them alive, even heal them off some damage off them. It's just so cool how this card works, and I think it's definitely more of what we should try for as far as control rather than just outright buffing cards that kill things. It's why I kind of like Minimorph. It doesn't kill the unit, it at least leaves a 3/3, which is a decent stat line. So yeah, let's focus on that design rather than just cards that kill. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoyed kind of going over this, and I hope some of this stuff was like kind of well thought out and you guys enjoyed the commentary. Like I said, consider supporting. If you want to subscribe, I will be trying to post more videos moving forward, so I would love to see that. And overall, if the devs watch, thank you so much for watching. That truly means the world to me, and I can't wait to see what you guys do with the January patch. This was super fun to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. But now, peace out.